So-Called is sponsored by loveboiseparks.org, which donates profits to support, promote, and preserve open spaces in Boise, Idaho. Use promo code SOCALLED for 10% off all your purchases at loveboiseparks.org.
Look at the opportunities that are given. You can always say no.
This is Mark Wojcik, and I'm wondering, how's your so-called career? Welcome to So-Called, the podcast that explores the why and how of work. On today's episode, we meet Katie Bratland, public relations and communications expert. Public relations is a broad field encompassing executive communications, media relations, public affairs, publicists, and more. When we met, I asked Katie about her areas of expertise.
My whole story basically is I've kind of been a generalist, I would say, for most of my career. And then depending on what my specific job is at the time, I've then delved a little more deeply into whatever it is that I'm doing. So I've done that with events, which was a big chunk of my career prior to moving to Minnesota and getting married, having kids. So I did a lot of that, but there was always different aspects to that as well. So probably since about 2004 or so, I have done more communications from the standpoint of projects I've done have involved executive communications, helping with writing speeches, helping friends with branding, messaging. And now what I'm doing, which I've been working on more, I've been more focused on for the past few years has been, I work for a sports management agency. And so we represent athletes, and most of those athletes at this point, or most of our clients right now are in Major League Soccer or other leagues around the world. We've got players down in Mexico and things like that. So there is definitely publicity involved in that. There's also part of the publicity piece would be writing profiles, writing bios, prepping journalists for having an interview with a client, prepping the client, things like that. And then the other piece of that would also just be making sure that our clients they're getting what they need from the agency as well. So kind of some client services that falls in with that as well. So it's more right now in terms of the public relations piece of it, publicity, because really they are their own small business. And so if they don't promote themselves, they're missing out on an opportunity to make their career better than it could have been without that.
So what do you like about that kind of work? What keeps you interested in it and growing and so forth?
I am a crazy extrovert, and I just love talking to people and getting to know people. If you've ever done the Strengths Finder, if you've ever gone through that process, there is a strength called a woo. And it's a person who just like, bring me the next person. I just want to get to know them. I want to find out about you. I want to understand what you do and what makes you tick. And then I think for me, part of that is then I look at that and I say, then can I connect people? How can I connect this person with this person? So that's a big part of why I just really like what I do. And that's been a part of kind of my whole experience is I would say I'm definitely a good writer, which is a strong skill to have in the line of work that I've ended up in. But I would say I do more just communicating than I necessarily even do like verbal communication than necessarily written communication, although that is a big piece of what I do as well.
When Katie was in college, she started out as a biology major, but it wasn't what she was looking for. A visit to the Career Center on campus suggested either political science or speech communication as a possible fit.
I just went, okay, I'll be a speech communication major. And it was a great major for me. It really was. I was a DJ at my college radio station. I also focused on organizational communication and did a little bit of broadcast journalism because of the fact that I was a DJ. So I thought, well, let's take some news classes and, on-air news and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it was a great major. However, young Katie, I don't think, for all that I love information, I don't think I was thinking very much about what am I going to do with my life post college. So I didn't go through any sort of interviewing process on campus. And at the time that I graduated, was interning for a radio consulting business. So I still wanted to stay in radio. I wanted to get into radio promotions.
With nothing opening up in radio promotions, Katie found a job at Dick Clark Productions, calling agents to get clearance to use clips from various shows. She took to the work immediately.
And people were like, have you done this before? Oh my gosh. And that's just who I've always been. I can walk into a room and talk to anyone. There's no nerves there for me. It's just I'm interested in people.
Katie went on to work at a promotions agency, working to design, train, and conduct product testing and promotions across the country. That work led her to a significant career opportunity.
And then a couple of things that I ended up doing brought me to, I ended up working on the 1994 World Cup as an event management consultant. So it was just a project. It wasn't, it was for M&M Mars. So Snickers was one of the big sponsors. So I worked for them from I think February to July of 1994. And then again, was at a crossroads. What am I going to do?
Coming out of the World Cup engagement, Katie went on to run field sales groups for companies in Minnesota and California. She expanded her role to include running events, national sales meetings, buyer events, and trade shows. Once again, Katie was in a role where she just had to figure things out.
Again, it was really interesting because that involved some aspect of working with executives. I got a call one time in the middle of the night at 10 o'clock at night from a brand new CEO saying, I think you have a speech for me. I did, because no one told me. So having to write a speech. And so the story of my life, going back to, I think I said before, I just kind of figure things out. There's Maria Forleo has a book called Everything's Figure Outable. And I've never read the book, but I thought, yeah, that's very true.
When Katie had kids, she took time off to care for them while she stayed connected to the industry, earned a graduate degree, and started working as a consultant.
So I just kind of kept, even though I was maybe volunteering or just helping out a friend, I stayed kind of in the industry and started doing more as I was getting my graduate degree. I stayed more in the public relations realm and that's what I focused on when I did I got a master's in business communication. So there's a lot of different directions you can go with that. When you look at communication in general, I decided to go a public relations path. And so from that point on, I really focused more on public relations. But again, there's a lot of things that fall under that title. So then I just did some project management for various companies, went in as a consultant. And then actually the way I got into this specific job is that my brother, who was a professional soccer player, he became an agent. Mm-hmm. And then he started his own agency. And as a, nosy and intruding big sister, I kept asking him questions. Well, are you doing this or are you doing that? Or have you thought about, he had one player who actually still is one of our clients who ended up playing for the Iraq national team. Like, that's a fabulous story. Let's get out there and get that on the Players Tribune, And so we started doing things like that. And then he ended up merging with a couple other companies 3 years ago, I believe. And at the time I was just kind of consulting for them and working on specific things. And it became, well, we really need you to help in a lot of different ways, not only just from a public relations standpoint, but client services. And just like any business that's growing, you need a lot of different, people need to wear a lot of different hats. And I think because I've always just had this sense of, well, I'll figure it out. I kind of did that again. And so now we've grown, and I'm definitely focusing more on the public relations and communications piece.
Is there something that you're looking at, kind of what's next, what you're planning to do, something you hope to do?
Right now, I would say I'm really enjoying where I am because I'm figuring it out, and I'm just kind of paving my own path for our agency because of the fact that there's only so many people doing what I'm doing within the agency. And I feel like there's still a lot to learn. But I would love to get to a point where I don't foresee that I'm going to, at some point down the line, completely retire. I just can't even imagine not doing something, whether it's starting a blog, writing a book, continuing to help nonprofit, organizations with my skills and abilities or whatever it might be. I do think about that. I don't think I have any specific thoughts, but I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. And with COVID now, I think that makes for another dynamic that brings us all kind of another set of, if I don't have to be in New York for this specific job, but I can do it from anywhere, well, where do I want to be?
Thinking about your career and what you've learned along the way, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think that I would say, go explore. First of all, listen to those that have been there before you, and not even necessarily those in a career path you're interested in, but your parents, teachers, counselors, who, friends of your family, whoever it might be. Not only listen to the kind of freely offered advice, but also go search that out. One of the things I really enjoyed was informational interviews that I would do. I was just like, just tell me about what you do and how you do it. And I also just think, had I known more, not that I don't think I haven't achieved some great things. I'm actually very happy with where I am and how and getting here. But I also think, oh my gosh, I could have done X, Y, or Z. If I had known what the other options were out there, where my skill set really fit in this world that I kind of just fell into. I would say I would definitely give that advice. And I would also just say to people, just take the opportunities that are presented. This actually is a great example of advice I would give to someone, because one of my peers gave it to me. I was going to interview for the job with M&M Mars for the World Cup. I knew it was only a 6-month project, and they specifically said, we will not offer you, there is no job offer when this is done. And I thought, well, wow, do I really want to take that on? And knowing that there's no job at the other end when I'm done. My current job that I was in, I was doing well, and had already been promoted. And my friend has said to me, just go on the interview. It's not, because I was actually thinking, I'm not even going to go on this interview, because why, and she just go on the interview. You can always say no. And that was one of the greatest pieces of advice I've ever been given, because I did. And it ended up being one of the greatest experiences I've had. I loved the people that I worked with, and it opened me up to all of these other opportunities down the line. Not to mention, it was great to have a big company like M&M Mars, on my resume. So I would definitely say, look at the opportunities that are given. You can always say no. Why take yourself out of the running when it actually could end up being a fabulous experience? Because how much do you know about it at this point?
So-Called is sponsored by loveboiseparks.org, which donates profits to support, promote, and preserve open spaces in Boise, Idaho. Use promo code SOCALLED for 10% off all your purchases at loveboiseparks.org. Our theme and transition music was composed by Roberto Cavaco. All other stylings are the sound of my voice. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. Subscribe and leave us a review. So-Called is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and wherever you get your podcasts.